Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to part 3 of our Memories of Ice reread from Malazan Book of the Fallen. I took a week off just because this part was so large, so monstrous, that I wanted to take more time with it. And as always, guys, there's so much stuff here. I'm definitely going to forget so much that I want to talk about, but you guys are good at picking it up in the comments and pointing out the cool stuff that I forget to talk about. But before I get into that, I just want to make an exciting thing, an exciting announcement. I got a notification on my YouTube channel just nary a few days ago. Someone left a comment on my video I did a couple months ago, the Gardens of the Moon full series spoiler video. I got a comment, so I'm reading it through. The comment was from none other than the man himself on the cover of all the books. Steven Erickson left a comment on one of my videos. Can you believe that? He's real. He's a real person, and he saw my video, and he left me a comment. He responded to many of the questions that I had about the long-term series implications, a lot of foreshadowing that he was doing. So if you haven't finished the series, don't check out that video, because that video and his comment have series-wide spoilers. But go check out that video. It's the Gardens of the Moon, uncovering the foreshadowing, Gardens of the Moon, whatever I called it. He left me a very long comment too, a very detailed comment, and I was just like, no way is this the real one. So then I posted it on Reddit. I'm like, am I being catfished right now? Turns out he does this all the time, and he saw my video and he commented on it, and he's just like, what? The man himself. I've dedicated at this point multiple hours of YouTube content is my voice talking about his work and how much I enjoy it, and he left me a comment. Suffice to say, I was a little bit starstruck. Even when I was pretty sure it wasn't him, I'm like, this is pretty cool. This guy's seems like he knows what he's talking about at least. But everyone says that it's him, and he uses his real name and everything, not his pen name. So it's just it's the real guy, and it's, I don't know. I'm all right. You get the point. But he commented on the video. So you know what? Every once in a while. And you know what, too? The other thing, in his comment, he said that I was on the money for some stuff, too. So you can't say that I don't know what I'm talking about when the man himself says that every once in a while I got a good thought or two. Just saying. Got a little bit of credibility now. So just keep that in mind while this chaos unfolds in this part, because, man, am I disorganized for this part. So much happened, and it's just so much that even writing the notes felt like a monstrous task. But where I want to start, obviously, where we left off at the end of part 2, the siege of Capistan was about to begin. Can they hold out for 6 weeks and wait for the reinforcements from the Malazan / Brood / Tistandi reinforcements to arrive? Not even close, actually. Not even close to their goal of 6 weeks. I think they last 3 days, and it's an absolute bloodshed. However, we learned that the Grey Swords are absolute legends, holding their own, getting the defenders. All right. So there's multiple things I want to talk about. Let's just talk about the Grey Swords first. Get them out of the way. So obviously, fairly early on in this part, the Mortal Sword and the Destrian both die, right? And the Destrian uses so much of his healing power that he's sucked dry. Complete that with the poisoning of the Warrens. He basically withers away. Not a big moment. He literally just dies because he healed too many people. Sad. Brucalion, I think that's his name is. That's what his name is. The Mortal Sword. I wouldn't say I was ever connected to him that much. He didn't really have that many moments for me to get super emotionally invested in his death. But the fact he gets betrayed by Rathfanir, and he goes, yeah, this is a betrayal. Tell the Shield Anvil when he wakes up. He'll know what happened. Walks into his own death. Takes out so many guys. He becomes a porcupine with how many arrows are sticking out of his head. And then Hood, the Lord of Death, comes and says, yo, that was pretty cool, brother. You're dead with me. Personally grabs himself, which is built as this huge rare event. And so first of all, props to that guy for getting props from the God of Death. Good for you. But that was a great moment. And then it leads to a great Itkovian moment where he's going to get revenge. And then we learn his power as the Shield Anvil, and he threatens Nastor, the child of the first seed, with this. but he has the power to like absorb people's life and like their pain and all their like troubles. It's very, very vague on how it works, but basically this man like takes on the suffering of others and like purifies them in a way. So he takes the Wrath Veneer and he like sucks him up, and they're like, oh, like what are you doing? Like Veneer's gone. Like if you suck him up, he's not going anywhere. And he's like, oh, like I'm gonna do it. And you think like, man, like Coven's like a real like evil guy. He's like basically trapping his soul in like eternal limbo. So he sucks him in. He learns his whole life story. He's like, you know what? Like I understand you now, but I still don't forgive you. But you know what? Boom! Like I'll let you off to the afterlife. And he offers to do this to Anastor, like kind of like absolve him. It's like a purifying process in a way. And he wants to do this to Anastor, who you could tell is a very broken individual, very messed up life. And Anastor's horrified of being pure, which you find is like a very common thread of crippled God followers, right? They've accepted the crippled God because they have this like, they've had bad luck in their life. They've had this affliction. They're crippled of some kind. They have some kind of like affliction. And instead of like accepting help, they like delve into like this hate and spite and evil. And Anastor's horrified of this cleansing process. So he like runs away from him. And Coven's like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna purify you one day. Just you wait. But that was a great moment, and that's where like we get the great lines where Coven's like, and I like my work is not yet done. He just keeps saying that. But because they're so thoroughly slaughtered, the Grey Swords, and they lost their god, they adopt a new god. The wolves, Tog, I believe, is the name of the gods. So it's the two wolf spirits who we know, Baljag and Tok the Younger with his wolf eye. Those are the two spirits. So they're people we know, and they're also related to the Clan A, the wolves that were caught in the ritual with the Tlanamas. So they got connections now to the Tlanamas. They got connections to Tok the Younger. They got connections to Baljag, who has connections to Lady Envy. And slowly but surely, as always, all the threads have connections to each other. So we know that these Grey Swords now have connections to the wolves, which have connections to Tok, which have connections to the Tlanamas, and Lady Envy, and Baljag, and by extension Tool, who's playing a mask, and with Lady Envy and Baljag. It's all coming together in that connection, which I thought was a cool moment. But one of the coolest things I think that happened in this part was we get an explanation of what the hell happened to Hedrick last book. Because like it's very, very random, and I didn't remember this when I read Deadhouse Gates for the second time. It's very strange how it's like, oh, like I was a priest of Veneer, my hands are cut off because like I was like punished, ? And then like he touches his own chest and like the boar comes running out into the real world and runs away. In this book, they're like, yeah, like he's in trouble, he's in pain, he's in the real world. Like, what does that mean? Why did it happen? In this part, they explicitly say that what happened was Hedrick was supposed to be the Destrian. He was supposed to be the all-powerful wizard of Veneer because he was so loyal to the god. These priests were jealous or some corruption was going on, so they cut off his hands as the ritual, as you're supposed to do to people who are not loyal. And then Veneer was supposed to like have your hands or whatever and like give them back to you, or because he was actually loyal, Veneer was gonna like give him back his hands after he died. But because Hedrick touched chaos and like the Odorol, he was able to use the hands that were in Veneer's realm, and instead of like waiting for his body to be returned in the afterlife, he grabbed Veneer and grabbed him to his body. That still doesn't make sense when I'm even saying it out loud. But that's like the ritual that was going on there. So it was supposed to be a punishment. He was supposed to be Destrian, which shows how powerful he is. And instead of his body going to his hands in the afterlife, and like Veneer would have been like, oh, so sorry that happened to you, brother. He said, no, I'm going to do this instead, and grabs him with his hands in Veneer's realm and pulls him to the real world, which leads to this whole thing of Veneer getting down, the Grey Swords taking a new god, and then also allowing for Trake, the first hero, to rise up into that place of like the Lord of Battle or whatever. Which is another reason why they hold out so long in Capistan, because Gruntle, of all people, Gruntle, becomes the mortal sword of Trake. And there's a great moment in the very beginning where like, man, like he's fighting like with his cutlasses. He's like Veneer's tusks running around, and then someone's like, those aren't tusks, those are tiger claws. And everyone goes, why did you say that? Why did you say that? And then Coven's like, oh no, he's Trake. He's Trake's mortal sword. And he starts getting these tiger stripes, and he has this whole army of like civilians who like rally around this cry of like dead children. And Gruntle's motivations, I feel like, are still a little suspect. Because he saved Stani obviously, and then she was like sexually assaulted, and like it's heavily implied that I think she was like fully even like raped in this battle and in her first conflict. And he does it for her, but then even Stani says like he's doing it for himself. He's just using me as an excuse. So it's a very strange dynamic that's going on in his head. Like he's fighting for, he claims to be fighting for a cause because he claims he doesn't care, but he's really just doing this all for himself. It's kind of unclear why Trake picked him specifically, but we know that K. Rool's kind of pulling the strings here a little bit. We know that he knew Gruntle was going to be important from the beginning. He was working with Kilava, Tool's sister, and she was there when Trake died, and like all these gods are being basically guided either knowingly or unknowingly by K. Rool, and it's a very interesting process. And obviously we know Stani is also like a follower of K. Rool now, which is extraordinarily interesting. And speaking of K. Rool, one of the things he does, a small like side plot, the side plot of Buke. He gives him this power. We learn that he turned him into a soul taken, turns him into a little bird, and then, like we learned at the beginning, what happened to Trake was he stayed in his beast form too long, just became an animal essentially. That's what happens to Buke, and it's seen as this mercy because he has so much like pain over the death of his family, and like he's trying to get revenge on these two necromancers and try to bring them to justice or whatever. He stays in his bird form, and he eventually just like loses his consciousness as a human, and it's like a mercy because he's like free and he's like doesn't feel that pain that he's carrying with him. What I thought was a nice, sweet, but kind of semi-dark moment that this man is just like a bird now, flying around. And what else? So yeah, the hedrick explanation was super enlightening to me. And the last thing for the Grey Swords before we move on to that. After the battle, the Grey Swords say like they need new recruits, and they're going to take them from the Tenascowry, from the Panion Domain army that they just defeated. They're going to recruit them, and everyone's kind of like, oh, like, do you want like the team of cannibals on your side? And they're like, yes, like, and there's a great quote earlier about the army. They call them like the Panion Domain is like a tyranny of need, is what they call it. They're only in the army because of the circumstances then and how hungry and desperate they were. And I think it was Whiskey Jack that says like, or I can't remember exactly who said this, but they were like, you can't defeat like the idea of the Panion Domain without like defeating hunger. If hunger exists, this type of behavior will exist because it's all about need and just like a primal desperation, which is why the Grey Swords are like, these people aren't monsters. They were just hungry and desperate, and they were used essentially. And we will use them in turn and make them into great soldiers. And it's this idea of like redemption for them, which ties back to Itkovian's power. And he kind of like, he rejects such loud noises. He rejects joining the new joining Trake as his shield anvil. He rejects joining the new gods of the Grey Swords. He leaves the Grey Swords. He says, my goal is to give redemption. My job's not yet done, but the only person I get redemption from is Fenrir himself. And, you know, he's talking about Anastor, and he sees, like, he even, there's a great moment where he sees Corlad, and he's like, wow, the Tistandi have a lot of pain. And he goes, no, do not touch that. If I tried to, like, absolve that grief, I would, like, dump it. Like, I wouldn't even be able to get close. That's how deep their lore is, essentially. But it's redemption, and then the Grey Swords, who the new Zestrine is the recruit from part one that we talked about. They are trying to redeem these Tenascowry and make them into to better people and like redeem them in that way, which I thought was extraordinarily interesting. And then the other big thing I want to talk about, like I feel like I'm missing so much here. Oh yeah, I guess we could start here. So with Paran, he finally learns to like accept that he's the master of the deck, and there's a great moment when they arrive at Capstan, and like Ansi says, like the bridge doesn't have arrived. Like that's a great moment. But that's when Paran decides to accept his position, and he gets talked to from K. Rool. K. Rool's trying to pull the strings, and we learn that all the gods want him to reject the crippled god from joining the deck of dragons. They're like, he cannot join the game. You as master of the deck have the power to deny him, so you should. And basically, with the help of quickband, he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And there's a great moment where Silver Fox is trying to like convince him to do her like as Night Chill's bidding, and he's like, I won't be chained by you. I won't be collared by you. which was his character progression in the first book. It's coming back in full swing. He's like, I'm the master of the deck, but I won't be the master of the deck at Silver Fox's behest. I will do whatever I feel like. And quickband says this too. He's like, listen, man, if you have a gut instinct, you should do that because you're the master of the deck, not these gods. So even though Hood's saying, quickband, please tell him to deny him, Paran's like, I'm going to accept him into the deck of dragons. He's going to join the game. And quickband's like, okay, sounds good to me, because quickband is such a wily boy. He's so wily. And I think in this part, he is cemented as one of the coolest characters of all time. Not only does he have a great scene where he visits the sorcerers and he's like using all the different warrants at his disposal, like walking into walls, like and all that stuff. And he absolutely destroys the necromancers. Absolutely destroys them. Corporal Broach and Botchelin. It's so funny because up until this part, they're like really sinister, evil necromancers who like no one wants to mess with because they'll just destroy them. And they get beat the crap out of by quickband. And then later they get the crap beat out of them by the bridge burners who just like knock them out. So they basically just become like comedic relief characters because of how much their butt gets handed to them in this part. But it's such a cool moment and cool display of magic of quickband using all these warrants. But also like how wily he is with like the betraying of the gods and using the gods. And he's like, Hood, like I got my twig buddy on me and he's helping me out at the behest of the Barghast gods, but you have too much control over him. And that's messed up because these Barghast gods are new and you can't be taking advantage of them like this. So you're going to let him go. He's like, I'm not going to let him go. He's like, you're going to do it because I'm quickband. And the Hood's like, okay, I'll do it. And then he does it. So like quickband, like he is so subtle in his manipulations. He has so much going on, and he's one of the few characters, like main characters that we follow in this series who always knows more than we do and will never tell us what he knows because he always seems to be one step ahead of everybody, which is why he's such an interesting character. And speaking of characters that are always one step ahead of everybody else, I think this is also the part where Krupp haters need to shut up and sit down. I would say, listen, I think I even said it after my reread of Gardens of the Moon. I wouldn't know if I was a fan of Krupp. He speaks so backward. He speaks so much. He never shuts up. He's always eating a pastry. He's always around and rolling around and being disgusting and drooling and gibbering. But he might be the smartest man alive. Because we learn, like, obviously K. Rool's been pulling the strings, and who's K. Rool's right-hand man? And that possibly even surpassed K. Rool himself? It's Krupp. There's a great moment in this part. First of all, the moment where Kaladin Brute swings his hammer, and Krupp's like, I'm alive. It's like, dude, like, how? How, first of all? But he uses that so, like, the Malazans can see the blood, and they can see the poison, so they're up to speed with everybody else. He knows everybody's business. He knows what everybody's up to, and he knows exactly how to. He like warns people of everything of what they need to know, like through like whimsical talk. So it's interesting reading Krupp, knowing that he's always revealing something or always hinting at something important. That like lets you sift through all like the nonsense that he says, because he's always saying something important in the most roundabout way possible. But there's a great moment at the end there when all the groups are meeting and Ikovin's like, all right, first of all, I forgot to mention this too. I've been saying this, and it's so frustrating. K. Rooley is K. Rool. We know this now. And you should have known that at part one, because his name is literally the same. He just added the vowels. Anyway, so he reveals himself, and there's a moment where Ikovin's like, K. Rool looks at Krupp not as like, oh, like, Krupp's my favorite servant. He's like, wow, like, this guy's my equal. He's like, this guy is so deft and so smart and so, like, mastermindy. He's better than me at it. And K. Rool's been pulling the strings this whole time, and his blood is the warrants. So I feel like quickband and Krupp, two characters who, if they just like talked and like they sat straight, they told each other the truth, these guys could rule the world. They make Kellenved and Dancer look like schoolboys with what they could do together. Add in some characters that show up later in the series, it's unstoppable what can be accomplished. But so I think from this part, I enjoy Krupp. I enjoy like translating what he's saying, the nonsense that he spews, and I'm really enjoying that so far. And there's another great thing too. There's talk about like faith, and they talk about faith a lot. And there's a moment where K. Rool realizes that he needs to have more faith in humanity, which also ties back to Paran and his accepting the crippled god into the deck of dragons. At a certain point, the gods are realizing that for all their goals to become accomplished, for all the people, for all the things that need to happen, it's humans that have to do it at the end of the day, that have to do the grunt work, and they can't just follow the exact plan set by these gods because they don't know. It'll be the gut instincts of humans. It'll be their faith in the humans, which takes them the rest of the way. And there's a great moment with Whiskey Jack, a lot of great moments with Whiskey Jack. The first being, well, I guess not the first, but because they mentioned it multiple times, that all of the Malazan soldiers wanted Whiskey Jack to be emperor. I think they hinted at this in both of the other books, but basically it's like he is like such a great leader and so smart too that they think he could have ruled the entire empire. And his best qualification is that he doesn't want it, which is people would say all the time in the real world, right? The first qualification for power is someone that doesn't want it, right? Because they won't use it against them. But there's the great moment with Animator Rake in the witches in the Panion Domain, where he refuses to like let them be slaughtered by Dragniper. So he kills them all himself, and like it's like horrible because he's just slaughtering these prisoners essentially to like save them from this death of or this torment of being trapped in the sword. And there's a great moment with Animated Rake where he's like, essentially like, I'm so old, I've been around for so long, I've killed so many people that I was gonna do this so you didn't have to have that on your conscience of you slaughtering all these old women, essentially helpless old women at this point. And Whiskey Jack thought he was doing him a favor. He's like, oh, like, I don't want to trap them in the sword. This is a favor to them. And also, it's like, you don't have to, like, be the justice holder. And Animator Rake's like, listen, it means nothing to me, but it will impact you, like, you in your mental. So there's a great moment. It's like Whiskey Jack, and he's like, oh, like, everyone's going to think less of me because they watch me just slaughter these people. And all the soldiers know exactly. They're, like, wise to it. They're like, they know what you did. They know you just took it so they didn't have to go into Dragniper and the Eternal Sword. Like, he's such, like, a great guy. And everyone loves him, and I love him. Anyway, I'm not gonna dwell on it. That's for the future, guys. It's for the future. I think that's about it. I think that's about it for this part. There was something else I was gonna say. Oh, big thing, very large thing. The gathering of the Clan of Mass happens in this part, and now I feel like I'm losing the plot a little bit with Silver Fox. Her motivations change like the wind, and it's hard to keep up with. But there's the meeting with the Clan of Mass, and they're essentially like, in a kind of interesting fashion, which surprises even our boy Krupp. The Clan of Mass are like, listen, you can free us from this gathering. We could stop being undead, and like you could like let us like rest and let our souls be freed. Excuse me. Like, we're tired of hunting the Jagged. We've been around for way too long. Like, let us die, essentially. She says no. She says, I need you. And they're like, what? And Krupp's like, wait, what? You're not going to let them go? And then there's this standoff, right? Because then every time we see Silver Fox after that, it's like she's done a horrible thing. She's denied the Clan of Mass their freedom. And then the Grey Swords, like I said, I think I said this earlier, they come up and they're like, hey, release the Clan A because they're technically descendants of our Wolfglood, and they didn't mean to be in your ritual. You just took them there because they're your dogs. And she goes, no, but I need them. And she's like acting very childish. She's acting very immature. She's like, and she even has this outburst at Pranchol. She's like, you guys abandoned me. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, you were born like 10 days ago. I've been alive for thousands of years. I was there when you were born. And then like I waited the time. Like, what are you talking about? But she's like, you abandoned me. I'm not really Rivi. I'm not really Malazan. I'm not really Clan of Mass. Like, what the hell am I? I'm conflicted. I kill my own mother. I suck her blood every night through the air and make her old and make her sad. So she's lost and she's figuring it out. But we learn that all three of her spirits are like in agreement. Bellardan, Nightchill, and Tattersail of what they're about to do next. So that's coming to a point. And I feel like that's the most like hard to unravel part. Our boy Talk's still being crushed alive. He gets freedom every once in a while. He got some kindness from a Panion seer, the Panion seer domain. Nice guy who gives him a blanket, and he's like, listen, like this, what's happening to you is rough. And when one of the generals of your enemy tells you that you're in rough shape, and I'm sorry this is happening to you, first of all, it says a lot about your employer, but it also says a lot about what's happened to my boy. And it's very sad. And also, we get the sense that Envy's kind of going off the deep end a little bit, poisoning Gareth with her plague and not realizing it until the Segula are like, yo, like, you should probably heal your dog. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, your dog is dying because you're crazy. It's a lot, guys. It's a lot going on. Part 4. Part 4 is going to be a doozy, though. I can't wait for you guys to read it, or you probably already have, I guess, if you're watching this video. Unless you're reading along for me, unless like, you literally just wait until I post a video to read it. Why would you do that? Because who knows when I'm going to finish Part 4. I say next week. It should be next week, but will it be? Who knows? We'll see. That's all I got for you guys. I think I'm kind of losing it at the end here a little bit. But be sure to like and subscribe if you like these videos, and leave a comment below if you're Steven Erickson. Because apparently you could do that. Good for you. But no, in all seriousness, I appreciate all the support, and it's from you guys that have been watching since the beginning that this video got any traction whatsoever, that it comes up when you even search Malazan in the search bar, that he would be able to even find that, even if he watches every single video. It's amazing, and it's all thanks to you guys, and I really appreciate that, because it's a special moment being able to interact with authors, especially authors of works that are such a huge part of your personality, like this is for me. Because I spent so much time not just reading it, but just thinking about it and obviously making these videos about it, because Malazan is a special series, and I think it has layers of depth that are hard to find in literature, period. And that's the reason why I like making these videos, and that's why I think like a lot of you guys watch content like this, is because you agree and you want to have a dialogue with people who also like it as much as you do. And I think it's a special thing. So thank you guys for that. Thank you for engaging with me in the comments and being people that I could bounce these ideas off of, especially when no one I know in real life has ever read these books, and I wouldn't put it on them, because it's far too much to ask to say, here's 10,000 plus pages of a series. And guess what? You'll probably have to read it twice to really get it. It's a hard sell, guys. It's a hard sell. But I appreciate it, and as always, thanks for sticking around.